Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of On Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz. Very pleased to be joined tonight by someone who's been on the show many times over the years, and I'm happy to have her here tonight. Please help me welcome Lori Palmeri. She is the State Assemblywoman, Assemblyman, whatever, Assembly person.
Representative, yes.
The state representative for the 54th Assembly District here in the state of Wisconsin. And so during the 25-26 legislative session, you're always busy. But during this session alone, you've been serving on the Committee on Environment, where you're a ranking member, Committee on Forestry, Parks, and Outdoor Rec, Committee on Local Government, Committee on Housing and Real Estate, and you're a member of the Wisconsin Council on Forestry. Where do you find time to come visit us or to do anything else?
You know, it is tricky, but I'm always so happy to be here on most of the time, Mondays and Fridays. I'm back in the district, meetings, back-to-back tours, meeting with folks, and of course there's always the weekends. So trying to get out to, visit with the constituents here. We do hear from folks, obviously over the phone and through email, but it's always better to be here in district. And we try to squeeze in multiple office hours at different locations throughout the year as well.
But even at that, I can imagine that if you're out on a Saturday morning at the farmer's market or wherever, people are going to be
yes.
pulling you aside
yes.
and giving you an earful.
Oh, actually,
not that that's a bad thing,
no.
but it's like
co-op.
Wherever you are, then they're going to talk to you
yes.
about things on their mind.
It was 3 different folks tonight, just stopping for a quick run into the, food co-op, and it's good though. It's good. That's really the best office hours, don't you think?
True. That's right. Well, I appreciate your being here, and thank you so much. A lot of things to talk about. Many things are happening at the federal level, as we all know, and because of the government shutdown, but because of other things. But everything has a trickle-down effect, and so it's affecting people here in the state of Wisconsin. I want to spend just a moment talking about, we're taping this on Thursday, November 6th, and just 2 days ago, it wasn't a true midterm election, but it was an election of some significance. It was a good night for Democrats. Even Trump had this to say: "I don't think it was good for Republicans," quote unquote. But then, of course, in true Trump fashion, he blamed the results on the government shutdown, which is now officially the longest in U.S. history, and he blamed it on his absence from being on the ballot, which I thought was significant. So it was interesting. So what were your thoughts on not just Tuesday night's election results, but what that will mean for the true midterm next year?
Well, I don't have the crystal ball, but I did find it really interesting and fascinating that you had such a wide variety of folks that came out of these Democratic wins on Tuesday evening. 2 lady governors with New Jersey and Virginia, and then the mayoral race in New York. Really kind of wide variety of styles there, right?
Yes, and people
both can
of
be true.
Different nationalities. Which, we always kind of see that. We see people of different cultures, different nationalities running, but we don't always see them winning. And so that was one of the takeaways that I had.
Yeah, definitely a commentary, I'm sure, on much of the flooding of the zone that has occurred this year at the federal level. And very exciting and re-energizing, I think, for a number of folks, but also, pointing to what could happen next year. And in Wisconsin, certainly, we would love to see the Democrats take a trifecta.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about one thing that you had mentioned to me before we started taping tonight, and that is that the Senate has only met one time this entire year. And again, we're taping this in early November. So the state Senate has met one single solitary time all year. Why? they're not earning their pay by not meeting. I mean, what are they doing? Why only one time?
That's a good question. From what I understand, and let's face it, there are other committees and there are caucuses and there was the whole budget process in the beginning of the year as well. But certainly at this point, we've seen one floor session. I believe they're scheduled one next week. Time will tell whether they meet again, but it appears that there are more Democrats now on the state Senate, and so Republicans couldn't necessarily roll everything through without getting some Democratic votes. And as we saw with the budget, right, there was some negotiations.
Yep.
That was a good sign. There were some things that weren't perfect with that budget, no doubt. But I would like to think that they would meet more, that we would all serve our terms responsibly and earn our paychecks.
Yep. I agree. I know they're doing other things, like you mentioned, but having Senate meetings, I think, is important.
Absolutely.
So that people can see what they're doing.
Yep.
Because we don't get to see the caucuses and that kind of thing on, what is it, Wisconsin?
Wisconsin I.
Wisconsin I, okay.
Not the caucuses, but those committee meetings you can see.
Yeah, we get to see some.
Yeah, but not
some
everything.
of the other stuff we don't get to see. So we don't get to see them, in their true form necessarily, and we don't get to see the full impact of, I don't know that impact's the right word. We don't get to see the full body of work that they may be doing or not doing. So,
and we haven't met as heavily as we did in the first session I served on the Assembly side. We've certainly met more than once, but not to the same extent. And even then, the agendas do seem to be rather abbreviated.
Sure, yeah. Well, we've got a lot to talk about, some things that just happened today. But before we get to that, one of the committees that I mentioned you're on is the Housing and Real Estate Committee. Mm-hmm. So, what is happening there, and, what does it mean for people with low to moderate income and that kind of thing? Talk to us about that.
Sure, yeah. So this is a new appointment for me. I just started with the Housing Committee last month. There was an opening that came available, and I was grateful to be appointed. But the Republicans moved very, very fast on a package of bills that centered around a residential TIF statute, accessory dwelling units, mobile and manufactured home, clarification as to who's a resident, who's an occupant, and some things around tenant rights. They were decent policies, but they could have been better. I did have an amendment that got adopted on condo conversions to grant tenants who are in apartment complexes, if they are to be sold or converted to condominiums, have basically like a first dibs on the unit that they're in. So I was grateful for some bipartisan work there.
Kind of like a first right of refusal thing?
Somewhat like that, right? Yeah. Again, on the one that they're in. And there are a package of housing bills that will be coming out soon. Some around prohibition of application fees. That was a constituent request from our district, and hearing that a bit around the state about how the application fees have gotten a bit much. Residential lease requirements, offering those renewals, some bills around short-term rentals, and granting back to your local control the ability to determine if and when and how long, which you and I know back from 2017 that was put in that no municipality could restrict less than 180 days. I've been working on something called a transparency utility charges around water bills, where sometimes you'll have you won't have individual meters. And so averaging gets done based on a number of units in a building. So we're working on rolling that out to require more transparency to the renter to see, what they're paying and how that's calculated.
Sure. Can we go back
Yeah.
to the application fees?
Yeah.
Prohibition of application fees. So has that passed?
No,
Okay.
no, it hasn't. It hasn't rolled out yet.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Because I know I've talked to people. I know firsthand. Even with the same company, you apply for one apartment, you don't get it. You apply for another apartment, they want another application fee. That's not right. I mean, you as a company, say company ABC, okay, well, I've got 50 units, and someone applies for one, well, I want a $25 or a $50 application fee, and oh, sorry, you don't qualify for that one.
If you get a response.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're paying the fee and you're applying and you're not even getting a response.
Right. Certainly not in a timely manner, and sometimes
and while
not at
folks
all.
do have the ability to request that fee be refunded if they are not, approved, the work that it would take to recover that, it's a bit of a burden. And as you point out, sometimes owners have multiple properties, and why should you pay more than once?
Well, that's just it. I mean, the whole point of an application fee, I think, and I think most people would agree with me, is to check your credit, probably look at CCAP or something along those lines, but basically to check a person out to see if they qualify to be in a unit. Well, if they don't qualify to be in one unit, how are they going to qualify to be, maybe if it's a lesser rental income from that unit, they might qualify for that. But you don't have to do the work all over again, so why should you get the fee all over again? So,
And there was some talk about too, putting a cap on the number of application fees that you could take on one unit, right? Because sometimes, we've heard from folks that they may have 50 to 70 applications on one unit. Well, you don't necessarily need to. You may not go through that whole 50 or 70. Why do you need to take that much in?
yeah,
So
it's a money grab.
But some of the other things, with regard to housing, that I think have some real potential is, again, on this tax incremental residential TID, or tax incremental district, which would allow for like smaller and more compact, or more small units on an acre, a little bit denser, again, some of the single family, some of the duplex, and that. There was a workforce revolving loan down payment program that was introduced as well. Some of these have gotten hearings, some of them have not. But the package that the Republicans brought, they just moved it extremely fast. And so there was a hearing, and some of these passed through the Assembly. And I'm not quite sure where they are in the Senate, because again, they only met one time. So
Okay, all right.
they could hold that next week. I have not yet seen the agenda for their house.
One thing I wanted to bring up about housing, when you were on the last time, and gosh, I don't even know when that was. I think it was probably about a year ago. But we talked about a statewide mandate that in new multi-family housing developments, that a certain amount of units be set aside for low to moderate income people. And I know that there are some communities that are doing it, that they have those requirements in place for developers, and the developers don't seem to be any worse for the wear. It seems to so far be working out good. Where are things, is anything being done on a statewide basis to
require a certain percentage
set aside for low to moderate income? Yeah.
obviously we have, some of the agencies like WIDA and that who help incentivize those income affordable units, but there is not a statewide requirement on the developer side. What's coming more is looking at ways to make the building of additional housing stock more affordable on the building side. But one of the things I'm really excited about is more discussion about modular and factory-built homes. So I met with a group last week, and we were talking about the fact that you may not even know the difference between that and a stick-built home on site.
Yeah.
And they can produce these in 6 weeks' time. Now, you may not be able to get it on site and everything prepared and hooked up for more like 6 months, but it's still perhaps a bit faster than your traditionally built homes. And I know, the city of Oshkosh, I believe, passed or created a handbook that had a certain number of specs that could be chosen from that would be approved. So it saves some on the engineering and the blueprint and architectural costs and that. So working on making it more affordable on the building side and a variety, right? A variety. And it's interesting because I had to be educated on, in my mind, manufactured home was, kind of like the old trailer mobile home, right?
Very different. It's very different.
Very different. And these, some of them are being partially built off-site and assembled on-site. Some of them, I actually toured, I think it's called Built, down on the south side of Oshkosh, where they build, it's more on the commercial side, but full bathrooms and these modular things that can just be picked up and set in. So I think that the supply side of this, and I also believe that we're starting to see more folks co-house, which we didn't see as much of maybe before. More folks were looking for their own individual spaces. But obviously, as the costs of everything else have gone up, I think the co-housing is a little bit more attractive these days.
Sure. Well, and I, for one, would like to see more tiny homes being built. We've got, I can never remember the exact name of it, but we've got a tiny house village north of town. And of course, that's a little different because that's providing transitional housing for people. But there's a lot of people who, maybe they're empty nesters. They no longer need the space that they once did. Maybe someone is just really wanting to downsize in a major way. Or maybe it's their first home and they just don't need that much space.
Sure.
I think tiny homes, should be allowed.
Well, and actually, I'm glad you bring that up
places.
because the accessory dwelling unit bill, this, it was bipartisan, would allow accessory dwelling units, which are typically your smaller detached, to be done by right across the state. That was getting a little more work done on it before it hits the Senate, but that is, in my mind, kind of a variation of tiny homes because it's typically a smaller separate structure. They keep kind of monkeying with it as to whether or not it can be newly constructed, though, or whether it has to be an existing one. So that's the piece. But I mean, certainly you're seeing some homes, some really fascinating technology, 3D printed homes out of, man-made or synthetic things. I've seen a number of things that are kind of exciting on the horizon. But as far as what we're doing here, I also toured where there was a partnership between 72 employers. This was down in Sauk City, the city and the school district. And they took some school district land that was not being utilized. And this partnership, they created a child care center, and they were building apartments that would be affordable by an entry-level teacher. And so that being, there were homes that were being built that could be afforded by an entry-level teacher salary, and then some kind of, I guess, what you would call more upscale market rate. So you would have people who work in a community be able to afford to live in that community.
And that's
Very
what we all
creative,
should
though.
be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, 72 employers got in this partnership to help with this. So.
And that was in Sauk City, you said?
Sauk City. They were just breaking ground on the residential side. I toured the child care center. So if you have someone, just starting out as a child caregiver or early childhood education teacher, they should be able to afford to live where they are working, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about with this new housing development on Jefferson Avenue or Jefferson Street here
yes,
in Oshkosh.
the corridor.
I mean, they're going to have a
55
daycare,
units.
55 units, and they're going to have a daycare that will
And second
accommodate
shift.
first and second shift workers.
The first in the city, I believe. And 55
think so.
units, I mean, I live just around the corner from there, and I'm excited because that's the first thing that we've seen, really built right down here, downtown in quite a while. That's new, I think, other than the Burns properties on Division.
Yeah.
Which is about 20 years now, I think.
But, so I think the city is making a few inroads with affordable housing, but, no matter what you do, it's never quite enough.
We've been a bit behind on that, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, what else on housing and real estate do you want to chat about?
Let's see here.
I mean, I think we kind of covered it all.
Yeah, I think for what we have for tonight that we can talk solidly about, the basic takeaway is the work that's being done is increasing that stock to ease the cost increases and bipartisan work, and it's an improvement upon that workforce affordable package that we did in last session, and even those got some modifications to allow some finance stacking that they call it, to make them, and some suggestions on new programs with some of those dollars that didn't get spent on that because there were some restrictions that weren't attractive to the builders.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to jump around a little bit from what I had originally, thought we'd talk about, because this is really super important, and I want to have enough time for us to really kind of chat about this. There have just been devastating effects from this so-called, I hate even the fact that I have to say it, but this one big beautiful bill, whatever. Devastating effects, and that affects insurance premiums. The government shutdown is causing problems with benefits under the SNAP program, and I know that just today I saw this just as I was leaving the house to come here. Earlier today, a judge said that the federal government must, by tomorrow, which would be November 7th, reinstate full benefits for SNAP recipients. So that's good. But you've got a lot of things that you're working on here with respect to the SNAP program and what's going on there. So,
that was just breaking news right before we came on. What we were looking at is like $43.5 million annually to cover lost federal dollars on the SNAP side of things here in Wisconsin. And there's something that's really important to talk about with the BBB and SNAP, and that's something called an error rate. In Wisconsin, we're at a fairly decent low error rate of 4% in the processing of the SNAP and the EBT. A number of states are way above 10%, but the BBB insists that if your error rate is above 6%, it will cost tens of millions of dollars. Now, because of the new requirements, these new 80 hours a month of work or training or volunteering in order to qualify, and many other changes. And that affects, by the way, folks who may have had work requirements waived because if they were 54 or older, that is now changed to 64 or older.
Wow.
So if you were 55 and you were receiving SNAP benefits, you would now be required to meet that 80 hours a month, either work or volunteer, or there were a couple of, but the thing of it is that with the partial and some of these other restrictions that are not clearly defined by the USDA on implementation, it could push your error rate over that 6% and cost a lot more money, which would mean fewer actual dollars going to folks on that. And so the reason why the full payment is so important is because when there was this discussion about a partial payment, you couldn't mechanically distribute these calculations of partial payments in a timely manner, like between the software and the distribution mechanism. And so the requirement for it to be the full payment makes it happen a lot faster. We shall see whether or not that order is followed by Mr. Trump.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will be. But with the federal shutdown and the FoodShare, there are, and this is a number that you gave me, 700,000 Wisconsinites will not be getting paid this month, the month of November 2025. Now, of course, you know, that may change now because of what's happened today, but
the judge's order is followed.
Yes, so but let's talk about that a little bit more, because let's say that the judge's orders are not followed. Even if they are followed, you are working with Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods and the different food pantries in town and so forth to really bring food to the people in different ways and in more frequent ways. So talk a little bit about what you're doing, Lori.
Yeah, so you know, I know that there are many other groups who are also doing food drives, so I don't want to overlook that. But I just felt compelled to try to, as a neighborhood, work with, Middle Village is my neighborhood, to work with Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods to do a food drive that would be a drop-off right here on Church Avenue at their new offices on their porch during their office hours. You can go there, drop it off on the porch. They've got boxes there. And they also have a Sleep in Heavenly Peace drive that they're doing in addition to that. But it would be now through next Friday, the 14th. And just a little, all of us doing these different drives are, you know, getting more to the pantries, because the pantries have already seen an increase. And there's a area, Winnebago area hunger task force that there's like, I believe 7 pantries that are part of that, and they're seeing more people. They're getting fewer dollars, right? Because much of their federal funding has also been cut, and so it's going to take all of us doing what we can, if we are able, to pitch in to kind of fill that gap. The state can do some. There was like about $10 million that did make it through the budget to help area pantries apply for additional grants, but $10 million statewide. I just took a tour this morning at the pantry with the Department of Agriculture Secretary and the Consumer Protection Secretary, and I mean, the volume that they do is absolutely incredible. But it's not necessarily enough to fill all 700,000 across the state, right?
Sure.
And just the idea of folks going hungry, it just really moved me to do something on a personal level. And then the other thing that's exciting is the Oshkosh Area Pantry has, they're going to open on Saturday, November 8th, from 10 until noon. And on November 22nd from 10 until noon. So 2 extra days during the month for folks who may not be able to get in that during the weekly hours.
Because they might be working or whatever.
Yeah, they might be working. And so, yeah, we rounded up some volunteers, and I'm very grateful that their board decided to do that as a trial run, and we'll wait and see how things shake out this month.
Sure.
They said, before they would decide, about December.
Well, it's so important, and thank you for doing that, because and thanks to everyone involved with your efforts here, because these really are grassroots efforts. But it's so important, as you know, because let's face it, the working poor is getting larger and larger and larger. And
groceries are not getting cheaper.
No, they're not. They're going up. But even if they were staying the same, when people are, they don't have as much money coming in.
Yeah, I think
it's a problem.
I think the maximum SNAP benefit is like just under $300, and I think they said the average is, between 150 and that 300, but
that doesn't go far.
It doesn't go far. I certainly have not seen that. I mean, maybe if you're super careful and you go to Aldi for one thing, and you go to Pick and Save and you Piggly Wiggly
and
for
you're couponing.
And you're couponing.
But people don't always have time for that either.
Right.
And think about the money that you're spending in gas, running around to places. So while all those are good things to do, they have a negative side to them as well. So the drop-off address for the Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods is 135 Church Avenue here in Oshkosh.
Very convenient for folks who are just, between the university and City Hall or the city center. And if you live on the east side or the north side, it's a quick little stop on the side of the road. Run up there, drop it off, or wherever. I mean, like I said, I know that UW Oshkosh has a food pantry for college students specifically, and I think they get some sourcing from Feeding America. But I got numbers from them this week because I wanted to check in with all the pantries to see how they're doing on inventory, and they were telling me they were like over 297% increase in the poundage that they give out to students between September and October of this year.
It's
and a
awful.
Doubling of the number of folks.
It's
and that's what we're hearing from the other pantries too. Lutheran Food Pantry, they relocated. They used to be on Division Street, and now they're in the Second Chance Thrift Building, right off of Main Street.
Oh, okay. All right. I know
up by St. John's.
Yep.
And the director there said they've seen a doubling of folks coming for assistance. And 1/3 of those, they said, are new people that have not come for the pantry in the past. 900. She told me as fast as the 952 pounds came in, it went out the door.
It's a sad state of our situation.
And Hope Fridge, oh my goodness, right over here on Algoma. So that's the little refrigerator that you can kind of grab and go with the stuff that's ready to eat. The groups, the Kiwanis and the Rotary and the scouting troops that are making like 200 sandwiches and filling that, like 16 hours later, you would see a post that it was empty and ready to be filled again.
Yeah. Are you talking about the one that's at Trinity Episcopal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because my church is working with them on that.
Oh, yes.
And just this past, I think it was this past week, there were a bunch of sandwiches made to restock that. And you're right. I mean, you no sooner put the food in there and it's gone.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that's a sad commentary on the state of our society.
And that frustrates me on that side of it. But what does make me feel hopeful is that similar to COVID, it was a horrible time to live through, but we did come together and we did get through it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this community really does pitch in for those in need, and those who are able do.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this time of year, we're coming up on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And then Christmas, and I'm sure.
Olden Produce. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
One of the things at the tour at the pantry today, Olden Produce, a farm just west. They're always at the farmers market. Tracy Vins and her husband, they have an operation, an organic, certified organic. They had an entire truck of fresh produce, and pounds and pounds and pounds of fresh cranberries in there, and other, some of the holiday staples. So it's not just the can of peas at the pantry. We've got farmers participating and helping out too.
Sure, and that's a
Local.
wonderful thing. But Father Cars always does. He's they are one of many places that do this, but I think it's probably the biggest one in the city that I know of for Thanksgiving, and probably for Christmas as well. They put on a very nice dinner, and so if you can afford to, give them a little something extra, I know that they would appreciate it. I know in the past, I've bought an extra turkey and given it to them, because they go through a lot of turkeys, as you can imagine.
Oh, yes.
And so you don't have to go there to eat. If you want to, that's fine. If you'd rather just stay home and eat, they do deliver meals as well. But if you can help out, either volunteering or by just buying something extra when you're at the grocery store and dropping it off there, it would make the world of difference for somebody, and it would be very much appreciated. So again, if you can drop off any donations at any of the places we've been talking about, but the Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods is located at 135 Church Avenue. I'm trying to picture where that is, because City Hall here is 200 and something.
Right.
So this would
It's
be
literally-
closer to Main Street then?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
just 2 buildings to the east.
Oh, okay.
Literally, it's the old B. Young's Fine Consign building.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's in between City Hall and before you would get to the
Division
yeah,
Street.
Yeah, and what used to be the funeral home. So, okay, perfect. I think that we have pretty much covered everything on the food drive and so forth. I do want to just mention one other thing. If you can't drop any donations off, you can call them or you can email them. The woman's name is Julie Kiefer, and her email address is julie@gohni.org. That's julie@gohni.org. And they can coordinate a drop-off time.
I got a tour there too of their new building. It's really a fantastic opportunity. They've got the office spaces on the lower level, but then there are 3 workforce affordable apartments above, and I think
nice.
they still have 2 of the 3 that are for rent. So very walkable to downtown, but that model of having that come in as a regular income stream helps Goich and I operate their operations as well. So
Sure.
I thought that was a pretty exciting thing that they are now in our neighborhood, and the central city neighborhoods have all come together and started looking at some reshaping of some of the boundaries. But that's beyond, that's more of the hyper local, and I have a passion for it. But the state the state of our state legislature is also tied in with how things roll in with our local government and our local nonprofits. I attended a roundtable just yesterday morning for nonprofits that the Community Foundation sponsors periodically, and there were 90 different representatives from a variety of nonprofits in the area. And a common theme was fewer funds, fewer volunteers, fewer resources, more need.
Yeah.
And so I think the purpose of that was to kind of start to look at, where can we, collaborate and where can we work together. And I think this is a community where a lot of people have great intentions, but certainly things have to be precision efficient in this day and age with
Sure.
everything coming down from the feds.
Well, and speaking of the federal government, I don't know what the answer is to getting this shutdown stopped. These people need to, come together, and they need to work together and stop worrying about, not crossing the aisle here or not crossing the aisle there. Maybe what we need to do is, they're forcing people to work without pay right now. I know those people will get their money retroactively, but right now is when they're working without pay. And maybe we need to stop paying all of these lawmakers in Washington, and they don't get any money until they get this crap figured out.
Kind of a pay-for-performance model.
Absolutely, And I just want to say this about, people working without pay. I recently traveled out of state, and the air traffic controllers are working without pay. I got back, thank God, safe and sound, and there were no issues. The TSA agents, and I was in major, international type airports. The TSA agents were just as friendly, I think in some cases friendlier than I've seen them in the past. And they're working without pay too, and they were absolutely wonderful. And so I commend all of them for having dedication to the job, despite the fact that they don't have an income right now.
Well, and I did notice, here just in the last 24 hours that this 10% reduction in flights as a result of some of these demands that they're not feeling, safe in operating. Folks are needing to call in, or maybe they're finding other jobs or what. But, I think that 10% reduction in the number of flights that can operate could potentially, we could see that increase or a greater reduction in that. And as you run up to one of the busiest holidays of the year for people traveling, it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So it's awful. But yeah, pay for performance. You're not working, you're not performing, you don't get paid. And let's not forget, these people are the ones who are able to give themselves raises too, and they do every time they have the opportunity to do so. They happily give themselves raises, and then they just simply stop working for all intents and purposes, and it's just not right.
And I don't think we can have that conversation without mentioning the fact that the Democrats are holding out to make sure that folks are not seeing losses of their health insurance,
their healthcare,
the ACA premiums that we're hearing from folks from around the state. They could be farmers, small businesses, and that unmanageable. Mm-hmm. And so that, along with the Medicaid requirements to continue to qualify for that, we've got about 63,000 in Wisconsin at risk.
Wow.
$72 million for employment training, no federal guidance, payments to the providers will be reduced. It's a ripple effect across. It's not just folks on Medicaid that this impacts.
Yeah. So while the Republicans are blaming the Democrats are actually trying to make things better for the American people, and making sure, like you said, that they have affordable health care under the Affordable Care Act. So, all right, well, let's jump back to some of these other things. You had on your list something about local government, grant writing and compliance assistance.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So what is that all about?
So we did have a hearing in local government on providing some grant assistance to especially like smaller communities that may not necessarily have like planning departments in that. They were looking at like $5,000, which probably isn't even enough. But certainly if you think about when we're talking about the housing piece of it, right, you've got to have the plans in place to address these things. And so there was a recognition that there should be some funding available to help with some of the grant applications that some of these communities might need to apply for. Another piece that was rolled out earlier this year is the shared revenue fix. And if folks remember Act 12, there was an increase in shared revenue. It still didn't cover, what the increases had been with inflation, but there was a proposal earlier this month by the Democrats in the state legislature to alleviate some of those issues with the calculations of how that is done, because it didn't quite equal out. For some of the smaller communities may have gotten like a 200% increase, and some of your mid-sized like Oshkosh, we got about 20%. It was a help, but it still didn't cover like the if you look at the municipal services program, all of the services that a city provides to some of the state facilities and things like that. So you've got to have a combination of these things for our local units of government to survive too. I mean, we saw, on the council this week, they're looking at having to cut, tens of thousands of dollars from the Humane Society at a time when they're completely, and I don't want to beat up on the council at all, but city governments and local units of government are having to cut back really tightly on a number of things because of the other not being made whole in other streams.
Sure. Yeah, like we've said a few different times now, this all has a trickle-down effect. Who started that? Was it Ronald Reagan that called it the trickle-down effect or something like that? I think it was. I'm not sure, but that is definitely what we're seeing here. Very, very clearly, and it's just making for very sad situations. I don't know how else to describe it. When I see people going hungry, when I see people watching to see when food is thrown into a dumpster from a local restaurant and then they go in and grab it right away, that breaks my heart. And something's got to give. Something's got to give so that we have people in homes that they can afford, and whether they're owning the home or they rent, we have to have affordable housing, true affordable housing. And I know that that's a word that it's a relative term.
Yeah.
But we need to have low to moderate income people being able to afford housing. So that's my definition of affordable housing.
Your teachers and your starting nurses and your child care providers, your elderly caregivers, the folks who are serving this community need to be able to afford to live here.
Yeah, and people have the right to be able to put food on their table. And so those are two really super big issues. Let's see, education. I know that you're not on an education committee, but you follow this thing closely, mainly because your husband is affected by a lot of these things, being a professor at UW Oshkosh, but you follow closely. That's one of the things I've always admired about you, Lori, is that no matter what the issues are, even if you're not directly on that committee, you look at the big picture. You're always looking at the big picture and seeing how one thing affects people and how that one thing might also affect something else that you are on a committee for. So you're always watching the big picture.
It's definitely a lot to try and absorb, and I'm very grateful that we do have folks who are taking those deeper dives and who are communicating those things to us. But yeah, speaking of the bigger picture on education, we saw this budget was not a friend to our K through 12. It was marginally not quite acceptable, but marginally better for the higher ed than what was originally thought was going to happen with that. But I guess I just want to say that if we're not investing, in our K through 12 and our young people's education, how can we sit there and spend up to $40,000 per year incarcerating folks. So if we're not investing on this end, we're ending up paying on the incarceral end for folks who may have had a different path had they had better resources along the education. So,
like incarcerating them for what? Like, what are we talking
Well,
about here? Some minor offenses, or?
no, I'm saying that, you know, perhaps folks may have taken different paths if they had the opportunity. I mean, I learned that a number of folks who are in our correction, there's a high rate of lower than fourth grade, you know, literacy levels. And so if they had perhaps had more opportunity for a well-funded education, perhaps that path would have been different for them than in that. But I know that, you know, the governor's plan has been to reduce them. We incarcerate people at such a higher rate here in Wisconsin than our neighboring communities. And there's a really high rate of folks who are revoked for like technical things on their probation that end up incarcerated. So, you know, I'm glad that we're starting to look at changing that number for Wisconsin and revamping. I think Waupun is intended to be more of like an educational type vocational campus, for example. So we shall see how long, you know, it takes for that to roll out. But
okay. Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
I'm sorry. I drifted off. My apologies.
You just all of a sudden you just stopped, and I thought, oh, okay, this is different. So something else you had on your list that you wanted to chat about was the State Equal Rights Amendment. Tell us, what is that all about?
So I had the pleasure of reintroducing the state of Wisconsin Equal Rights Amendment for the state constitution in the last session. There are other representatives who have reintroduced, and I have signed on again for this. And it's really quite interesting that Wisconsin was the first to ratify the U.S. Constitution, ERA, and yet we do not, in our state constitution, have an Equal Rights Amendment. And so that is, and it takes 2 sessions for the Constitution to be amended, and then go on to the public in a form of referendum. But the Equal Rights Amendment for the U.S. Constitution, you know, it was supposedly there were the 38 states that did, but then it never got recorded, and there's some arguing over whether or not some states pulled out or not, and this kind of thing. But Wisconsin never did pass anything at the state level. So
is there anything in the works right now to get that passed?
It's been reintroduced, and so if we can get an opportunity to have a debate on the floor, that would be wonderful.
You know,
it
things
was not
like this
allowed to
shouldn't
be
even really
the speaker's
need to
purview.
be debated.
Yeah, the speaker
you know?
of the assembly's purview to allow something to come onto the floor. It's not just whether or not it gets a committee hearing. It's also whether or not it's allowed to be brought to the floor.
You know, things like that. There shouldn't even be a question mark. You know, it just seems like they should be common sense. We skipped over a couple of things with respect to education, and one of them was voucher transparency.
Oh, yes.
And healthy school meals. And and I know adjusting the general equalization aids, but I know that a lot of people, including myself, don't necessarily understand what that is. So in a few minutes, can you talk to us about those things?
Yeah, it's a very, very important that folks understand that on the transparency and the voucher quotes is that your education or your Oshkosh area school district portion of your tax bill also includes a portion that the public schools do not receive that goes to the voucher choice schools, right? And so the bill would require transparency in describing that on the tax bill. We're basically supporting two different school systems on the same amount of dollars. But on the voucher, and I think folks should have the choice of being able to, go to the private schools, but they don't require the same standards, number one. They aren't held to the same requirements in terms of providing special education, and some of the special education can be quite costly. There's something called a high cost special education supplement, and then there's so that ends up taking from your budget. And I will be honest, I'm not an expert on school finance, but that piece of it is really important for folks to understand, that they're actually paying for two school systems through those tax dollars.
Okay. I also briefly want to talk about broadband internet.
Yes.
So the Wisconsin Broadband Office, which is part of the state government, and part of the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, they all kind of work together. But there's been a movement for some time, and Governor Evers has signed an executive order creating this committee or task force, if you will, for broadband access. I've got a couple maps that I want to show. The first one, that's a map of the entire state of Wisconsin, and I know it may be hard to see, but we've got two different colors there. The blue is the areas that are served by broadband internet, and then the orange is the unserved areas. And if we look at the second map, which brings it a little bit closer to home, we can see that there are some pockets right around Oshkosh, and then elsewhere, drifting off to the north and the northwest, of unserved area by this. So do you have an update by chance?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. So Governor Evers had recommended allocating $400 million in the state's broadband expansion grant program during the 25-27 state budget. However, the Committee on Joint Finance reduced that number to zero and approved no new funding for broadband expansion. The Trump administration had announced some sweeping changes to what they call the BEAD program, broadband expansion. I don't recall exactly what that stands for, but it delayed Wisconsin's progress to bring that affordable, high-speed internet to homes and businesses across the state. So Representative Randy Udell, one of my colleagues, is working on reintroducing the governor's $400 million in funding for broadband, and this is what we call like a standalone bill. So what happens is the governor, puts out his proposed budget. Then that happens in February. And then by April and May is when Joint Finance, they do, 4 or so hearings around the state. And then they remove all these things and give basically their version. And then what doesn't make it through the budget, then people end up introducing, or representatives end up introducing these standalone bills to try and reintroduce them. So in this case, Randy Udell is trying to reintroduce that, and there's a package of 5 bills.
And I don't have any more time.
Oh, shoot.
I'm
okay,
so sorry.
But yes, it's being worked on.
And go to the state's website and check these things out. I want to just make one mention here. We are once again looking for volunteers to help out on On Oshkosh. If you want to learn how to work behind the scenes of a TV program, this is your opportunity to do it. You don't need any experience. We will provide training to you. You just need to have a willing mindset and an interest in helping us out. It takes 4 to 5 hours a month is all we need from you, and I think you'd have a good time. So reach out to us at ionoshkosh@gmail.com, and we can take it from there. Thanks to my guest Lori, thanks to my crew, and thanks to you. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.